Good morning, Amberley. I'm really grateful for you coming over this morning to chat from the horse box. You're a British photographer. You live in Barley, but you were brought up in the northwest near Oswestry, and you've done training in photography and fashion. How would you introduce yourself?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. I generally introduce myself as a fashion photographer, but it definitely doesn't cover everything that I do. There's a fair amount of documentary exploration and weird and wacky things that go into my job that are definitely not covered by fashion. But by trade, I am a fashion photographer.
Looking at some of your work, you do sort of investigate people's lives, don't you, all over the world? You're sort of interested in all these different backdrops to your shoots. I mean, what sort of cultures and things do you delve into?
I mean, it's really whatever's fascinating me at the time. I'm really, really interested in exploring humanity and the different versions of it. And I think it's also the way people dream. What I find is everywhere in the world, everywhere you go, people all dream the same dreams. And I find that really interesting. And that's, you know, I've lived with Berber tribes in the Middle East. I've lived with ritualistically cannibal tribes in Papua New Guinea, and you know, people in England, people fashion photographers, models in New York. It's all in a weird way the crux of the same dreams. It's all escapism, and that's what I find really interesting, and that's what I like to mix between the sort of fashion, the outside, and the realism.
Yes, I mean, normally from the horse box, chats to country characters, you know, the vet, the farmer, anything to do with racing. But in your case, you have got a sort of unique perspective on all that because you view it through a lens, but you have a deep interest, I'm guessing, with British countryside and its culture. Are we part of these sort of lifestyles that you look at?
In a way, that it's my background as well. And from day one, even at university, my focus was on countryside traditions and heritage. And I think there's a certain amount of a love for British heritage, being British and preserving that. And it's always been somewhat romanticised to me as well. I've always been in love with the British countryside. It's a constant source of inspiration. So it's just something I come back to time and time again. But there's definitely some fascinating characters and stories here as well.
Yeah, there certainly are. It's a hard life making a living in the country.
It is.
And you sort of view it through this lens. What does that give you? I
think it's a romanticised lens more than anything. I wouldn't necessarily say it was high end or highbrow. You know, I'm just as interested in shooting sheep farmers in Scotland as I am in estate owners like we just worked with, the lovely people at Bryn Kinnaird. I think it's a romanticised version of British culture and tradition, and a very classic
the full
view.
Spectrum
Exactly.
of it.
Yeah, and just wanting to preserve that. I quite often find fashion photographers are very focused on moving forward, new technology, new development, what's new on the street in London, and I've always been the opposite of that.
Yeah, I notice, I mean, the Rake, the magazine, the Rake is a big part of your work, isn't it? And that very much is concentrating on these heritage, you know,
exactly,
products, that, you know, the beautiful watch, which is not a sort of, you know, digital one, cars that are, you know, suitable for Goodwood revival.
Exactly, they really champion traditional craftsmanship, quality, preserving the way things are made traditionally. And those small brands as well, a lot of Savile Row. So the things that I think could easily die out if people weren't championing them. Championing, I can't even say it. So I think what they do is quite important. And sometimes people don't realise that, you know, quite often they think, oh, they're expensive, they'll be fine, they'll always be around, rich people love them. And it's not the way, actually. These pieces, you know, the watches, for example, it's the kind of thing that somebody buys once and is handed down through the generations. It's not something that people are buying every day. And it's really important to look at the craftsmanship and appreciate the art within that and try and sort of preserve that, because it will disappear very easily. Especially in the market today with commercial fashion, everyone's looking to digital, to AI, There's a lot of marketing to China and Southeast Asia as kind of the new markets, and it's very fast fashion. Even in the high-end spectrum, we're seeing a lot of the high-end designers making, T-shirts with labels over them and things like that. That's what's selling nowadays. And for me, that's kind of the opposite of what I'm interested in. I'm interested in pieces that last the test of time.
So the Rake magazine, can you give us some sort of idea of just how big an international deal this magazine is? Because obviously it's quite a major...
It is. It's a big global magazine. It goes out all over the world. I mean, you see it in pretty much every country. They've also got, I think, an Asian edition as well. It's one of the premier luxury men's magazines in the world. There's not too many magazines that focus on the luxury and the craft and sort of the heritage side of fashion. So it's quite unique in what it does, really. Who
would you say are this audience for that? Is it just men, or is it marketed sort of across, the widest possible?
It obviously is predominantly a men's magazine. We do have a women's issue as well, and we do sometimes feature women in the men's edition. So it's not solely for men. I think it's honestly for anyone interested in that sort of classic aesthetic. So, I mean, I know readers from a wide range of backgrounds, to be honest. I think it is just anyone interested in that, in classic heritage feel, it appeals to. Yeah.
And a print magazine has just as much relevance. I suppose it's a heritage piece, just like the content, isn't it? So people do still... crave the print.
I think people collect them almost like books nowadays, like coffee table books, and the way that it's printed is kind of intended. It's not a throwaway item anymore. It's like an art book now.
So when you go all over the world to photograph these tribes and things, how do you make contact and get yourself within the heart of what's going on?
I mean, it's different every time, depends where we're going, but there's usually anywhere from 6 months to 2 years of pre-production. A lot of research goes into it from our production team at my studio. And then, for example, with our recent trip to Papua New Guinea, we would make contact with fixers who are used to working in that area. So we worked with a wonderful fixer called Mark, who has 30 years experience working in that specific area with the BBC, and other TV channels, film channels. So he's very experienced with specific tribes there. So we worked with him to arrange the on-the-ground side of things, and he sent us a lovely translator as well. So we had a translator in the field with us. So they're both very experienced in what they do. And then from there, you just have to be prepared for the unexpected. No one can ever tell you how it's going to go. There's no plans out there with tribes. It's you just have to learn to go with it. And on that particular trip, we came across another tribe that we weren't expecting to while we were out in the field that had never been documented before. So you never know what you're going to find.
So how would you use a New Guinea tribe in your sort of high-end photography for the magazine? How does it fit into that sort of world?
Well, that's nothing to do with fashion. So that was a purely documentary project. So it's part of a book project that's coming. So the aim of that was basically to go and record some of the stories, the histories of the tribe, because even in Papua New Guinea, well, actually particularly Papua New Guinea and Indonesian Papua, a lot of their culture is being lost. So there's a lot of fights with different nations over the natural resources that the tribal land is sitting on. They're being forced into smaller and smaller areas. And then, like anywhere, they have a real issue with the new generation wanting to become more westernized, moving into the cities, wanting phones, wanting to be on social media. So their way of life is really threatened. So my aim was really to go out there, sit with them, record the stories and the histories and the languages that are being lost, and just take beautiful documentary photographs to really sort of preserve that for future generations, because it is disappearing. So that did run in the Rake magazine as a documentary project. So some of those photographs and a few of those stories, but there's a lot more to it, a lot more to come in a book project.
Preserving our heritage is something we hold very dear. You have done a photo shoot with the Wynnstay Hounds. recently last autumn. How did you find that experience as a sort of preserving heritage
Oh, I loved
view?
it.
Did you?
It was such a great experience. I'd do that every day if I could. I mean, for me, it was just as important as recording the tribal histories and cultures in a weird way. Again, it's something that's under threat at the moment, particularly politically, as we all know, and something that I find equally important to preserve and record, and also try to show people and educate people what it's really about. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And, you know, the reality of it is a lot of very good people who struggle to keep our traditions alive, which is really what makes us British and sets us apart. I mean, otherwise we would just become, you know, a clone of America and other places. And I think we'd look back and really regret that loss of our culture. And it's something that if we try to preserve it now, you know, we can keep a hold of, and I think will be really important to future generations. And it's important to us in the countryside as it is. But yeah, it was a beautiful project to do with some amazing people. The hounds are gorgeous.
They are, aren't they? Yeah,
So
you did
great.
a fabulous job of it, Amberley. All the horses were presented, and the hounds, of course, always the star of the show. How did you find the hounds to work with?
Oh, they're beautiful. Do you know what really surprised me actually? Having not spent time in amongst the pack, obviously I've seen them at the Boxing Day hunts, I've ridden with them before, but what I really didn't appreciate is how well behaved they are.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't put my dog in that situation and expect her to behave anywhere near as well as these hounds. They're just beautiful and they're so affectionate. Yeah. And I mean, most of the time our biggest task was keeping them from, you know, slobbering all over us, kissing us and hugging us the whole time.
Yeah. It's a joy. It was a joy to watch the video that you've done. They are highly trained. Each individual is highly trained. Years of training go into each one.
Well, you can tell. I mean, they're so much better trained than
Yes.
you know, my pet dog.
Yes.
Well,
the first time I met you was at Oswestry Show back in August 2024, when the Wynnstay Hounds took centre stage in the ring. Yeah. How did you find us there?
Henry, I think, was on the mic, and he just invited all of the children from the show to come into the arena. And thousands of children just ran at these hounds and were grabbing their ears, grabbing their tails, and there was not a single growl, anything. The hounds were just lovely with them. I think we had a few escapees to the burger van, but that was about.
There were a few chips that went missing. Yeah.
But I was just amazed at just how well behaved, affectionate, lovely they are for working dogs. Because we really know the breed predominantly as a working dog, but it's just incredible to see them, how gentle they were with children, with everybody else's dogs. I mean, it just wasn't a concern. Whereas, like I said, you know, you put my dog in that arena, she wouldn't have been very happy. So it really was incredible to see just the level of training and just how gorgeous these dogs really are.
How did it compare with the high fashion photographing the hunt livery and things?
Oh, I love that.
Does it slot in well with your choice of clothing that the models wore?
Well, ironically, we had a Grace, the fashion editor. She had racks and racks of clothing, beautiful, very expensive clothing. And a lot of the time she was choosing to put the boys in their traditional livery over clothing that was sitting on the rack.
How
and saying, no,
interesting.
this is better. So we actually did a whole load of photographs that haven't been seen yet. They're hopefully coming out soon, of all the traditional liveries. Because, I mean, it sits so well. I mean, they're beautiful craftsman-made pieces. I think Henry was saying about the traditional tweeds, the family tweeds that are unique to them. I mean, that's really everything that we stand for. So to be perfectly honest, it sits really well in line with everything that we were shooting.
I thought the models actually coped very well, adapting. Yeah, they did.
They're lovely. I mean, Aaron's a city boy, you know, so he's never seen a lot of this. He was just in love with it. We kept losing him to, you know, various parts of the fields and the dogs. He was in love with the dogs. And
so some nice puppy photographs that you got.
And Rich was fantastic. I mean, for a guy who didn't grow up here, he was on the horse, riding around, running around the hounds.
He did do a good job
so
on
natural.
The horse.
Yeah, and he was fantastic at it. I mean, I'd love to see more from both of them, to be honest. But everybody just had the best time. It was very memorable.
Amberley, if we could just talk a little bit about your knowledge of using the media to promote these heritage traditions that go not just in the British countryside, but all over the world, really. What's your view of the different uses of the media and how it can be used to help the public understand things?
Well, I mean, I think first off, you've got to really decide what your target audience is, because there's different forms of media for different age groups, different target audiences. For us, you know, if we're speaking to the 25 to 35-year-old demographic, it wouldn't be the same media type as you know, 19-year-olds, for example, or the youth of today. So I think first off, it's really understanding that, and then understanding the different platforms and how to create campaigns to work on those platforms. And that's very much what I'm involved in. So obviously there's print media. Now print media is beautiful and timeless, but isn't really useful for getting PR messages out there these days because of the speed of everything nowadays. So it's really online media that I think is very helpful for people getting messages out there. Podcasts are fantastic because it gives people the chance to really talk about a subject in depth. Whereas I find with print media, for example, you get a couple of lines quite often taken out of context. Social media is hugely important to what we do, and to be honest, is the best way to get the message out there nowadays.
From the grassroots, we do put our videos up and our charity things and have events. And then we have from above, like our parent organisations. And I think they find it much harder to get the message across, even though they have the power of the membership. People prefer the grassroots story.
They do.
So how do we use their power and our grassroots to sort of work together?
I mean, from my perspective, a somewhat outside perspective in a way, it really all comes down to PR. And I think what I see a lot with the posts currently is it's very much done from the point of view of people who are in that world and the membership. And
are you talking about the parent organisations,
yes,
or are you talking about the grassroots?
The parent organisations. Well, to an extent, both. Right. But I think there's the skew, the angle on it isn't for your everyday person who knows nothing about it. It's not going to hook people into, oh, this is an interesting story, I'd like to find out more about this. So if it was me, I'd be crafting, you know, PR-based campaigns in a way around this that really showed why somebody who, for example, lives in central London, who has nothing to do with the countryside, has never ridden a horse, why should I care? Why is it relevant to my life? Why is this important for me to want to preserve? It doesn't touch my life. Why would I care? And that's really what I don't see.
So you would plan a sort of campaign of posts for the middle person who doesn't actually take part,
hit every demographic in a way, and they're different posts because you're giving different information and you're delivering it in a different way. And I think it's just that there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, really, all I hear is from the opposition. I never really hear from the people on the inside about the reality of what's going on. I mean, even for me, I'm a little bit in the countryside world. I still learned so many things I didn't know through doing this project. And I never really hear that side of things. And it's never presented in a way that fits today's media. It's always, I get that people want to you need to present the facts. That's very important. But it's quite often presented like news articles. And the reality of people scrolling Instagram or various social media platforms over their morning coffee is the hooks that draw people in tend to be more visual, more narrative, more personal, and more real. And less curated, if that makes sense. So
not corporate.
Not corporate.
Not corporate.
No, that will appeal to a certain market, but a very small market. Your mass market.
Not many, as I see it.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, what would really be a draw is show people what really goes on here. You know, just get out and show people how beautiful the hounds are and wonderful, and what happens to them. If Labour, for example, you know, do eradicate hunting, ban trail hunting, what happens to those hounds? You know, a lot of them are going to be put to death, put down. That's something that I think everyone in every household who loves animals would care about and has never really talked about. The personal stories in between, how important the hunts are just from the point of view of riding through the countryside, keeping an eye on remote communities, farmers, things like that, from a mental health point of view, a social point of view. And then there is the loss of our cultures and traditions, and we're just becoming bland. You know, we don't want to become an IKEA nation, but you start losing all of this. That's essentially what you become. And I think those are all things that every person everywhere can care about. Not everybody will, but it does get to the heart of the problem.
We need to tell more of a story.
Exactly. With the facts, but, humanize it in the sense of just show the real people behind this, tell the story in a way that different age groups, different people will understand and connect with.
What you were saying before is all media outlets need to be used, from podcasts to all the different platforms to print. Now, we do have a print magazine, and I'd like you to see this because you must have heard of it, The Cry, because it's on the same shelf as the Rake, I'm sure. And I would like to let you have a look at it.
Thank you.
And see what you think of our print magazine. This magazine is only directed to our hunt supporters. And with that in mind, I wondered if you'd have a look at our very smart front cover from the Peshawar Vale.
Lovely. Who's this on the front?
It's our chairman.
Oh, very nice. Lovely. Beautiful photograph. Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, it's nice to see the real stories and the real faces behind things. Oh, there's Henry. He was from our photo shoot in the Rake magazine. This is something, again, with a few tweaks.
What tweaks?
Could be put out
I'd be
to a wider
interested in your tips. Any tips for us?
Well, like you said, this goes out to your hunt supporters. But some of these people and faces and photographs behind it, with a few tweaks to how it's put out, and the message could go out to a wider audience that doesn't know. And it shows you the real faces, the real people behind things. I mean, it shows you the dogs that are at risk if all of this disappears. So it would be nice to see this go out
to a wider audience.
To a wider audience. Obviously, this is made to appeal to people who already have an interest in hunting. And I think if you were going to send it out to a wider audience, it would have to be a little bit broader. But I mean, there's lovely photos of, two little boys on their ponies with their puppies. I mean, these are
What do you mean by
faces
broader? What do you mean by broader?
Well, I think this has kind of always been the issue for me with the hunt community, is it's been very insular, and I understand why, because it's been about self-preservation. They've been under attack for so long. They're wary kind of outsiders. But I think, for me, that's what needs to change. It needs to show itself in all its beauty, what it is. It needs to... For me, the wider general public needs to care about it. But in order to do that, they need to know more about it. They need to know the faces behind it. They need to know the stories, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think it would be so helpful if they could, really get to see the history, the tradition, the people, and just how lovely they are. I mean, that was our experience shooting with the Wynnstay hunt, was they just couldn't have been nicer.
So, Emily, what are the sort of trends and how things are going to go in the future, so that we might be able to improve the way we do it?
I mean, social media trends change incredibly rapidly. It's a week-by-week thing. So for me, for example, in my office, I have 2 full-time social media girls, and every week to 2 weeks, we're doing reviews of what is sort of currently trending and things like that. And obviously, some things you just choose to ignore because you don't feel that they're right for your market. But it's an ongoing thing. So,
what sort of things that are trending?
Well, I mean, for example, on Instagram, there's a massive shift towards things being very raw and very kind of uncurated, unstylized. So if people really connect with it and feel that it's very real, there's a sort of split. There's the very personal narratives going on. So a lot of people talking to camera, front-facing camera. So rather than somebody filming a person talking, they are holding the camera. There's a massive shift towards that. And then we're seeing a lot more of the escapist content. I mean, it's always been there, but I think people wanting to escape the drudgery of their everyday lives and go into a world that is presented, very beautifully. So there's aesthetic content and then there's real content. And that's very much kind of Instagram trends. TikTok is different. Again, I'm not really the right person to ask about TikTok because my lovely 19-year-old TikTok girl in my office does that. It's not my world particularly. That one, I know we do a lot of content where there's a lot of text over the top. So it's kind of AI text that goes on. But yeah, I think that sort of realism side of things, particularly for Instagram, is more handing the phone over to somebody and having them talk directly to an audience rather than you interviewing them. That's very much one of the big trends that we're seeing for 2025. I think it's just, again, it's people wanting to connect. It's either escapism or people wanting to connect with a real person. I know that from our shoot at the Wynnstay, Hartley was just such a cutie, such a sweet, sweet guy. Yes. And I think, things like, for example, The World According to Hartley, where he's talking direct to camera, could be something that people would really, really connect with.
Yes,
And, he's great. He's down there. The hounds are climbing all over him. He's getting kisses from Posey every 5 minutes. Those are the things I think that people could really do with seeing. And what I noticed is, the boys, when they're talking to you, they're so lovely and approachable, and then you put a camera on them and they freeze. To be honest, I do the same thing. I think everybody does. And I think, so when you approach them with, okay, we're going to talk about this, because we did a lot of interviews with them, which will be released soon, you put the camera on and it's very much like, oh, am I saying the right thing? There's pressure. Whereas you just give someone a phone and give them some topics to chat about, and leave them to it, and you get a lot more. And you get a lot more of that sort of approachable, personable thing. So that would be my advice for a bit of content moving forward.
So Amberley, you left wilds of North Wales behind and decided to move to Bali. Is that a huge success?
I think so. Bali is definitely home. It's been 11 years, nearly 12 years now. I've got a studio out there, a dark room, a big film studios as well, which I don't shoot at, but it's a location that people from all over the world fly to shoot at. So I think it's been a success.
Oh, well done. That sounds fabulous. So the lifestyle there is a total contrast, is it, to your upbringing? Massive
difference. For me, it's just, I wake up, I come out of my bedroom in the morning, it's blazing sunshine, there's a swimming pool in front of you, it's warm. I think it's just that we are so much more active because it is warm. I find when it's cold, you want to stay inside your home by the fire and not really do much. Whereas for us, every morning we get up and a lot of people surf, or, you go for a long walk on the beach for a couple of miles with a coffee before work. Your day starts at 6 a.m. and it's nice. It's not unpleasant. So I think it's just a health thing too. It's much easier to be healthier, more active. That sunshine just makes you happier every day.
When you travel all over the world and you see all these different lifestyles in every different climate, is there any sort of underlying similarity or contrast that you could think of?
Definitely similarities with people everywhere you go. It's just everybody kind of dreams the same dream in a way. And that's really what I see, whether it's, someone running around in the jungle with a bow and arrow dressed in leaves, or whether it's someone in New York City, they're all dreaming the same dreams, which is really nice because it's that human connection. And I find that it's very easy to find common ground anywhere you go. I was chatting with some people recently about the book project in Papua New Guinea, and they kind of said, well, why you? Because, many BBC reporters, Attenborough types, have been out there and covered these things before. And I think the reason it was different with me is because you've got, these very established men who go out there with their big camera crews and come in and, get to the heart. But the reality of it is it's the women that talk, and they won't talk to other men. Whereas I went in, very small crew, and the first thing that happened everywhere I go is women would come up and start touching my hair because I'm blonde and they've never seen it before. And that's it. They're touching your hair, they're stroking your hair, they're touching you, they're dragging you over to come and sit down with them. And that's it, and they're chatting away. And it's the women that hold the stories.
But they could connect with you better.
But that's it. So I was a woman, so I wasn't threatening. And then they wanted to talk and they wanted to tell me about their lives. And what really came out of that was everybody has the same problems. Doesn't matter where you're from. Everybody had the same concerns. It was, I'm too fat. That boy that I like doesn't like me. He's cheating on me with her. It's all the same issues. Whether you live in New York, whether you live in a jungle, it was all the same thing. And it was really nice. You can always find that connection with anybody, anywhere in the world.
There is an art to connecting with people, and that's why I love podcasting. And Amberley, you obviously learnt this, how to connect with so many different people around the world. It's really interesting to talk to you. I'd just like to finish with a little borrow from the Rake's YouTube channel that I saw the other day, when they ask all these famous people that you must encounter 5 favourites. So I'm going to start with your favourite book.
I have to say, I actually had to write this down because, you know, when anyone asks me these things, you get Google brain, don't you? It's like you've never read a book in your life. I read about 3 a week, couldn't think of any, so I did actually write these down. Favourite books, that's a real difficult one because I'm a big reader. I would say, okay, so Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I love that book. It's a real whimsical, magical world. The way she evokes through her writing, you can really see it. Someone needs to make a film of that.
Well, we've got book club this week, so I'll be having a look at that one.
It's a fantasy book, so it depends if that floats your boat. But for me, it's just so visual. I mean, I read that book and I just want to create a fashion story around it. It's magical. Another similar one is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I love everything Neil Gaiman does. Again, incredibly visual, magical writer. So I'd say The Ocean at the End of the Lane is a particular Neil Gaiman favourite.
Gosh, I'm going to have to do some research on these. All right, favourite film?
Do you know what? I'm a massive Harry Potter fan. For me, I have it on all the time, just in the background of when I'm working. I think it's a comfort thing from my childhood. So I love Harry Potter. I love Lord of the Rings, The Great Gatsby.
Again, it's these other worlds, isn't it?
Exactly. It always comes back to escapism. I think comfort and escapism. So,
favourite city?
That one's really difficult. I've got loads, actually, for different reasons. So Shella in Lamu, which is in Kenya, is a magical place. I love that. It's all sand floors, sandstone buildings. It's beautiful.
Peace and tranquility.
Exactly. Paris, always. I shoot in Paris a lot. The architecture in Paris is stunning. Lecce in southern Italy. That's another really beautiful city. New York obviously has to be on there. It's just the energy of the place. And Wan Chai in Hong Kong, mostly for the food. The food's fabulous there.
Oh, that takes us to the last one, your favourite dish.
That's really hard. I'm a big foodie. I love food. I would say nasi campur. So that's from where I'm from in Indonesia. So nasi is rice and campur just means mixed. So essentially that is rice in the middle, and then you have all mixed small dishes around it. So there'd be vegetable, a lot of seafood, sometimes some chicken, things like that, all different dishes around there. But really anything seafoody, to be perfectly honest. I love seafood.
I love it too. And would it be possible to share a joke or a motto with us to finish?
Yeah, I mean, jokes. I'm not a great jokes person, in all honesty.
So hard.
I think my dad would be better. But I wrote one down for you that I love, that I always... I mean, there's a couple, but this is one that I always come back to. It's a Winston Churchill quote. Success consists of going to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. And I think that's really important, particularly in what you do as a fashion photographer, because fashion trends change all the time and everybody has an opinion. So you might work on something you're very proud of and other people will hate it. And there's always a loud voice of criticism, particularly now everything is online. So I think it's the ability to take that criticism or take those failures and keep going and still love what you do and believe in it. And I think that's really poignant.
Well, that is interesting because facing criticism, you have to learn to accept it and use it, don't you? So it's a very useful little quote there from Winston, as usual. Thank you so much, Amberly. I've really enjoyed talking to you and learning about your world, your other worlds, and I've loved it. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you for listening, and please share with your friends, which helps a lot. And I look forward to next month when it could be you in the driving seat.